guys, welcome back to Bench Studios. My name is Isaac and today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make a cup of coffee using a Hario V60 pour over. Using a Hario V60 pour over setup. Now, like the main popular one, you've probably all heard of Chemex. I don't prefer Chemex. We'll kind of get into that. What you'll need is some coffee beans, a coffee grinder for the coffee beans. You're going to want a gooseneck kettle, and we'll get into why you don't want just this kind of kettle. You'll want some water. I prefer purified water, just gives it a little bit of a cleaner taste. Obviously, you'll want your pour over. You don't even need the carafe because most of the time your pour over is just going to fit right onto a cup of coffee anyways. This was just a bonus that I got, but we have our carafe here. I'll kind of explain the difference between things as I'm going, but we'll start getting this water in here. The reason you're going to want this gooseneck kettle is actually for accuracy, because when you're pouring, you're going to want to be hitting all of the dark spots. And it's kind of harder to aim when you have this pouring out and it's all kind of random. But when you have this and it's kind of like more precise, more aimed, it's a lot easier to get all the coffee beans, which is really what we're doing anyways. That's the purpose of the pour over. So we'll fill that to the line right there. Go ahead and get the water cooking. You'll want that cooking through your whole process because that is a lengthy process, so multitask, kill the time. Next up, we got the scoop. Comes with the Hario. You don't have to buy this at all. You're gonna want this. Now, a lot of people use a scale. I'm cheap, so I don't have a scale. But the way that I kind of aim for consistency is I just do 2 scoops every time, flat scoops into the coffee grinder. And you're going to want to aim for consistency. If you can get a scale, great. I highly recommend it because consistency is very important with this. You're going to end up with a different taste in your coffee if you change any one thing about the cup of coffee. If you change the type of bean, type of roast, obviously, but if you change how much coffee is in there, if you change the temperature, the water, any little thing really, it's going to change how the coffee tastes. And that's why I had another guy on campus who does pour over coffee talk about like how much of an art it is to him, just because really you can change every little thing about it. So I also don't have a good grinder. I'm kind of teaching y'all how to do this on a budget, if you will. But this is the cheapest one they sell at Walmart. You're not going to hold this button because when you hit the button, it's going to start spinning. If you hold that button, the blades get spinning so fast that they're going to burn your coffee beans. That'll result in a really bitter and just really bad tasting cup of coffee, honestly. So we'll go ahead and do that. You're going to do it in pulses and just keep shaking it. That way all of the coffee beans are hitting those blades as they're spinning. And you can hit them as quick as you want to. Another thing when you're doing this that you're going to want to pay attention to is how fine you're grinding it. If you grind them too fine, you're going to get a really sour, a lot more acidic and a lot more bitter cup of coffee than you're wanting. But if they're obviously too coarse, the water's going to go through and you're going to get a watered down, not good tasting cup of coffee on that end as well. So you kind of shoot for the same coarseness, same grind every time. Just medium. For this pour over, you'll just want medium. A lot of times on the Chemex, you can go just a little bit coarser because it has a lot thicker of a filter. Now, the difference really between the Chemex and the Hario is a Chemex is going to have a really wide opening for the coffee to go through, and they rely a lot on their filter to get that coffee draw down a lot slower. But for the Hario, it's just got a tiny hole and a really thin filter, so it keeps a lot of the boldness, a lot of the acidity. The filters for the Chemex kind of tend to catch the body of the coffee and the acid as it's flowing down, so you're not really getting the full flavor of the bean as you're making the coffee. It's taking away from it a little bit. So that's why I prefer the Hario. A lot of people on campus disagree. Please don't kill me if you disagree with me. But we'll go ahead and see, give that a little bit more. And you can kind of hear when this starts to get done. You're going to want your water to be just under boil. Shoot for 195 to 205 degrees. I don't have a thermometer on mine, so I just let mine get to a boil and wait 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Then I go ahead and start the process, and that's how I time mine on that one. You can hear that almost done, so we'll get my timer ready. Yep. Really, in the end, the temperature, it is going to change the coffee, but that's the hardest part of all of this to keep consistent, just because unless you have a kettle with a thermometer on it, it's going to be kind of hard to gauge, what you're doing, how much you're doing. So other than that, you can get a fairly consistent cup of coffee. Just waiting on that to finish up. Just out of curiosity, does anybody do pour over coffee? I think, Austin, do you not do it? Man, I thought you did pour over coffee. So this is educational for everybody. This is great. I actually got into it because of personal evangelism last year when Brother Perkle was talking about it, and I was like, that sounds pretty interesting, I'm going to try that. And so I got one of the cheaper ones I could find, and it was a really, never buy a Bodum pour over, whatever you do. Really bad pour over, but it was like a good start, so I got that, and that just kind of got me into it. After I used that one until it broke, but when it finally broke, that was my excuse to get the one that I really wanted. So I got the Hario. I'm going to start to get that ready. Hear that boiling, so it'll automatically shut off in just a few seconds. We can go ahead and start that timer. Alright, so we'll start that, let that get to about 15 seconds. So your filter, you're going to want a Hario V60 V2, because this is a size 2, so you're going to want a size 2 filter. You're just going to take it right here where all these seams are, and fold it right across. And then you're going to take this here, pull it open, stretch it a little bit, and just throw it right in there. Alright, and then we're going to take the water, and the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take it, pour it directly on the filter. And there's many reasons for this. One, it's going to help that filter stick to your pour over. Two, it's going to start to get this hot, but the main important reason is it's going to get that papery taste out of the filter, which doesn't sound like a big deal, and I won't make anybody do it, but if you ever taste this water, you can taste the paper in it. It gets a lot of that flavor out, and you really don't want that papery taste in your coffee. So next up, after you do that, you can go ahead and take your beans that you ground up, throw them in there, and then you'll just kind of shake it out, get all of them flat, so now we just have a flat surface of the coffee grounds right there. And you can go ahead and start your first pour. This first pour is just going to be called the bloom. You're just barely going to get all of the coffee grounds wet with as little water as you can. And then you're going to let it sit for 30 seconds. So we'll go ahead and start that timer of 30 seconds. Now what this is it's letting all the gases escape so that whenever you're actually pouring it in, there's nothing restricting the water from going down. It's not keeping it up there longer than it should be. Another thing is it's all kind of rising. That's why they call it the bloom, and it's forming what a lot of people call the brownie, because it just kind of, I would pick it up and it's dripping. But it looks like a brownie right there in the middle. This is my favorite part of it, just because this is when you start to get that real coffee smell, and you just, when you smell coffee, you should be happy.
Amen.
It's almost soothing, and then you see that bloom. This is my favorite part of the whole process. But now you're going to start the actual pouring. So it's been 30 seconds. We'll go ahead and you're going to start in the center and just slowly work your way out toward the edges. And then you'll slowly work your way back to the middle. You just do this over and over while you're pouring. If you see any dark spots when you're going out, you can go ahead and try and target those, because really the main purpose of this is to get all of the coffee beans wet, because you want to use every last bit of the bean. If you're not doing that, then you're not really accomplishing the purpose of using the pour over. And now again, I don't have a scale, so the water is the hardest part of it all, because it's hard to control the temperature, and it's hard to figure out how much you're pouring in there, so you kind of just have to eyeball it. You don't want to pour too much in there like I did while I was practicing, because it makes a really watery cup of coffee, and that just wasn't a good cup of coffee for me that day. I'm not going to lie to you, gentlemen. So you'll slowly go. A lot of people, once they have all the beans done, they'll do what's called a center pour, where you just keep that water level consistent. And then once we've got all the water we want in there, go ahead and stop. And this is just called the drawdown process. It's just getting all the water through the coffee beans. What I like to do too is kind of swirl it around. This is to get all the coffee beans off the wall of the filter. What you want to see in the end is a flat bed of coffee, just like when you started. If you don't keep it stirring or keep it moving around, it's just all going to stick to the side. It doesn't affect it too much, to be honest with you, but if you drink it enough, you'll start to notice the little differences in that. So you'll just want to swirl that around for a while. Another very important thing that you should consider is what beans you're using. Now this is my favorite. It's starting to run out of it, which makes me sad, because my friend actually bought these for me in Tijuana. When he first got them for me, they were roasted like 2 days ago. If you can have them roasted within the past month, that's going to be the best cup of coffee you can find, just because you get that fresh roasted taste to it. It's been a little bit more than a month now for these, but it's still my favorite bean to use, just favorite roast, simple medium roast, nothing crazy, but that's my favorite roast to use. Another one that's really good is, there's one that my friend got when she went on a mission trip to Peru. She got me fresh roasted coffee from there, and that one was really good as well. So you can see the drawdown's just about done. Final water is getting through. But yeah, and you can kind of get crazy with the beans too. I had a joke going about baking coffee with my friends back home. So I went online and found maple bacon coffee beans. And really all it was they had taken the beans and it was almost like they smoked them, you know, like to get that smoky bacon taste to it, and then covered them in maple syrup because they were like a little bit slimy, but it was a really good taste to it just because it had that smoky and sweet taste. And here, now I'm very carefully going to bring this over to show y'all. This is what you're going to want to end up with, is that flat bed of coffee. Now there's a little bit stuck to the walls toward the bottom where I stopped swirling, but that flat bed of coffee is what you're going to be looking for. So what you can go ahead and do is take this and set it to the side. We'll leave it there so we don't make a mess. Next, you just swirl it up, you know, get everything that we just did mixed together a little bit, and you are good to pour your coffee. And now my timer for making the coffee does have about 5 minutes, so it does take a little bit longer than would your Keurig or your Mr. Coffee maker, but in my opinion, this makes a lot better of a tasting cup of coffee. So Mr. Group Leader, Nathan, here is your coffee.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Tell us what you think about it. Tell us.
That's really good.
Good cup of coffee?
Yeah, you guys want to try it? I'll pass it down.
You can pass it around. Now, in your opinion, would you get that taste from your common Keurig?
No.
No, and a large part of that too is going to be the coffee beans, just because those freshly ground beans keep that taste to it, and you can just get rid of that filter. But that is how you make a cup of coffee with the Hario V60 pour over setup. Hope you gentlemen learned it. Alright, thank you guys for watching. Hope you learned something. Use that Hario V60 pour over. Hope you make a good cup of coffee, and be sure to like the video and subscribe.